Okay, in this tutorial, I want to show you how you can work with arrays and what are the arrays. So let's say you want to have multiple geometries and the diameters of those geometries are defined in an array. So let's see what is an array. In general, the way to store information or having variables is defined as, for instance, we say let's say variables diameter is equal to 50, right? This is how we in general define sort of global variables. So in this case, we're saying that there is a variable called diameter or dia, and then the value that we assign to it is 50. But let's say you wanna have series of circles in your screen that has different type of radius. For that, you can use list of items inside an array. So for instance, list of numbers. So let's say you can, and for doing that, you can define saying that, okay, let dia is equal to an array of numbers, array of things. It can be numbers, it can be a string. You can put any values you want here, and in this case we have an array. So this is an array that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements or things inside this array. What is very important about array is that you can have access to a specific item within that array, meaning that each of these elements has an index. In this case, the index of 20 is 0. The index of the second item is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this makes array very important, and this is how you can have certain elements in the array to read. So let's see what I mean by that. So let's first of all define our page by create the canvas. We know we have to do window width and window height, and let's say in function draw we have our background. And I'll just make sure oh, the reason you can see on inside when you right click, you can get to inspect, and then you can go to console and read what is the, it says failure to load the resource sound.min, because we actually don't use this. So I'm going to comment this out by pressing on comment and slash. Let's save this again. Then it says that is not defined. Window width. Maybe I have some oh, yes, typos here. Sorry about that. Sorry, I did very fast. Yeah, here you go. So now we have this. Now let's say we want to have an ellipse that it's at the point, let's say, and I want to just make sure that it doesn't have any stroke. So that, and then I want to give it the same color as we had before, 0 to 55 to 55. And now our ellipse, I wanted to draw it at, let's say, at point 100 by 100. And the radius of this, I want it to be third element in our array. How can we get there? That's one way to do that is because this is an array. You can have an array, and then inside you can have the name of the index. So this is 0, 1, 2. So you can have dia 0, 2, and then dia, we want it to be circle, so we can do 2. Oh, I'm sorry. This is sometimes my browser has a new type of yeah, here you go. So now if I put, this is 0, 1, 2, so this is going through index number 2 in our array, which is 0, 1, 2. So it gives the value of 50 to our diameter and 50 to our diameter. Remember, this is a XY coordinate of where you want your ellipse to be drawn, and then this is defining our diameters. Now, let's say you want to have access to this number. So you can say, instead of 2, you can say 4 and 4. So now it should be 160 by 160 that is drawn at coordinate of 100 and 100. But what if you want to draw all of them, all of these circles? Or you want to have 5 circles and each of them exactly with these diameters. For doing that, basically, you basically want to make sure that you're drawing the circle inside your canvas and making sure that each of them is drawn on your screen. So one thing, let's start from having a for loop. And for loop, you usually can do it this way. You can say, let your I is equal to 0, I is smaller than dia dot your array and the length of your array. So you don't need to measure it yourself. It's just do it for you. Is counting how many things are in your array. And then I smaller, I plus plus. Then you want to go through your array lengths and make sure that all your ellipses are going to be drawn. So now if I give the diameter or the, let's say, opacity of 10, and if I draw this, maybe the 10 is too small, let's do 50. So you can see, and I'm going to move this to our middle of our screen. So I want to do window.width divided by 2 and window height divided by 2. So now it's going to be on the center. And what you're seeing here, if I make this even bigger, so let's say make the numbers of the radius a little larger so you can see them better. You can see that what it did, it draws series of circles, all of these circles from in the center of our screen, which is window.width divided by 2, window by height divided by 2, and then drew series of circles that each of them are coming from our arrays, meaning that the first time this for loop is going to run, the I is going to be 0, right? So the diameter, and get the dia 0. So I is here is 0, meaning that it's going to the array and pick the item in our array that its index is 0, which is 200. Then again goes through this for loop. Then I is going to be 1. And then if the radius of our circle is going to be defined through index 1, so it goes through our array and pick up this number, which is 100. So then it draws another circle in the same location with the radius of 100. Then for the third time, I is going to be 3, therefore our index is 3, and it goes again to the same array and pick up the third element in our array, which is 500, and draw another ellipse. This is how the array works, basically. You can access having to your array by going through a for loop and picking up the index that it's associated with the radius that you want in that array. Now, is array just for numbers? No, that's not true. In fact, we can see that we can also place words. So let's say we have array of words. We can define them, let's say, series of words like fine, yellow. You have to define them as a string, and then let's say good, I don't know, and let's say blue, right? So now our array has 1, 2, 3, 4 items in it. And what we want to do, we want to, based on pressing on our center of our screen, our mouse, we want to make sure that these words would show up. How can we do that, actually? That's easy. We learned how we can do function mouse pressed as something that is already exists in P5, right? So when mouse pressed, then what we want to do, we want to pick a random number of a random text from our array of words. So now, let's say that we want to have these letters randomly show up in the center of our screen as we are pressing or use mouse press. As we saw it in the previous tutorial, we can use this function called mouse pressed in order to randomly pick one of these strings of or words from our array list. So for this purpose, I think we can start from having a global variable, let's say is pick random word. And we can see that basically inside our mouse press, we can define that what do we want to pick. So we can say pick random words or whatever you want to name it, and that doesn't matter. It's going to be random number between our 0 to the length of our array, which is in this case is words.length, right? This is basically how many elements we have in our array. So we want to pick a number between 0 to the number of how many elements we have here. Obviously, we can see we have 4, but this could have been hundreds of words. And it will pick this random number that it's associated to the index from our array list. If I just save this and open inspect in your browser and go to the console, and there is a way to console or monitor what are the values of our pick random word. So if I do that to just monitor, see what are we getting, here you can see that we are getting 3.5, 3.4, 3.8. This is a float value, and it's not very helpful because I want to get access to 0, 1, 2, 3. So in order to make sure that this is not a float value, you can just simply add an int, which is basically an integer, before the random calculation, so making sure that it's always giving us an integer. So now you can see that it gives us values between 0, 1, 2, 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, which is perfect. So we're randomly picking up the number. Now what we want to do, we want to draw or actually use our function draw to actually write our text. So let's just first of all fill our text. Then we have text size. So in this case, I want to do 32, and then I want to have it in the center of our screen. You can use text align and then type center, and then you can have your text. In this case, we know that our array is called words, and inside our which letter you want to pick, we can use our the index that we randomly picked from pick random word. Where do you want to draw it? You want to have it at window width divided by 2. You want to have it in the center of your screen, and window height divided by 2. Let's see what we get. Uncut reference center is not defined. I think I had a typo here. Let's do it again. So now you can see that as I'm clicking my mouse, different words, different letters have been picked up from our array of our strings. So now you can imagine, because this is all basically generated based on the loop and picking a random based on the length of our array, you can even add more words and it's automatically picking up one of those random words and projected in the center of our screen. I want to make it black so you see it better. And the cool thing about it is that because you're using calculation to make sure this is in the center of your screen, it doesn't matter if you change the screen size, it's automatically in the center. Now, one of the maybe assignments for you would be think about ways that you can also use either mouse press or mouse location to change maybe the radius of these circles. You can even challenge yourself by giving some sort of interesting behaviors by adding sign to the radius of the circles. So it creates sort of breathing or growth effects to the circles that we are seeing here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But the most important thing in this tutorial is to learn how you can work with arrays. Arrays can be either letters, like strings as strings, or it can be numbers in your list. And you can, in any given point, you can have access to each of these items in your list using indexes, which can be defined using a variety of techniques. That's pretty much it for this tutorial.